Welcome to this presentation of Northcote History. My name is pmich, and I've been researching Northcote's history for almost 40 years. I've been fascinated how Northcote, an early gazetted suburb of Melbourne, was originally the place of choice for the well-off of the 19th century. Mansions with large allotments were built, later to be demolished, and the land broken up into housing lots in the 1880s. This map dates from 1864 and shows Upper Northcote. Westbourne Gve is the lower street on the left. Note, no James Street is shown. High Street at the time was known as Plenty Road. The Herald newspaper in the 1930s summed up perhaps why Northcote lost its moniker, and it gave three reasons. Government House was proposed but not built here, the late establishment of the railway, and thirdly, and probably more importantly, the massive development of the clay industry, specifically brick making. Northcote Brick Company, shown here, would be Northcote's biggest industry for some 3 generations. Of course, Northcote is now, once again, a dynamic and successful suburb with High Street, its vibrant centre. High Street is a special road and not just one of the longest shopping strips in Melbourne's north. It's part of the original Hoddle line drawn up in the 1830s. So, join me as we delve into Northcote's interesting past. Contact details and further tour suggestions are at the end. Enjoy the show. This digital tour explores life on Northcote Hill, west side of High Street. Tour begins next to the town hall in the open space, doing a circle around the block, heading up James Street to the railway cutting in part 1, and in part 2 it continues along Westbourne Gve and back to High Street. Many gentlemen, councillors, business, professional people and churches settled on the hill. It was the top with wide uninterrupted views of the 19th century. Location, location, location. Everyone wanted to be on top of the hill. Of course, this is only a small selection of the heritage and memories of the hill. Don't forget, over time buildings may change, become altered, renovated and new additions added. The first person we meet is William Rucker, a Wendish German who came to Melbourne via Tasmania and had a brief encounter with Northcote. Established the first bank in Melbourne, the Union Bank, in 1837 and bought substantial land holdings on Northcote Hill going west to Brunswick. Rucker sold the area we will be exploring to a George James in 1842. James ran a small farm here including an orchard and a small cottage near the corner of Westbourne Gve. Thereafter, this area would be known as James's Paddock. In the late 1870s, the Northcote Health League was formed and used to meet at the Bridge Hotel in West Garth. The league was made of concerned citizens upset about the way Northcote was developing, establishing polluting and smelly industries. Later, this group became part of the first Northcote Council when established in 1883. In 1884, the Bellevue estate was put up for sale. Some enterprising councillors saw an opportunity and bought land for the future town hall for £715 without council approval. We start the tour in the now open space between the town hall and library. Earlier there was a 2-storey Victorian terrace standing here dating from the 1880s. Later it was the site of this 1966 modern infill building. The new council offices were always difficult to cool and heat. The Northcote Free Library, built in 1911. Unusually, it was built because of a dare. Robert J. Wally, with his brother, produced the local newspaper, The Leader. In 1907, when he's complaining yet again about the poor library facilities from the town hall, a councillor is reputed to have retorted, "Go ask Carnegie for money." Andrew Carnegie, the wealthy steel philanthropist, had established a reputation for funding public libraries. Wally rose to the challenge and in 1907 began a series of letters with the Carnegie Foundation. The foundation seemed happy with Wally's proposal and granted, eventually, £3,000. Northcote Council begrudgingly had to accept the generous offer of a free library. Council initially had wanted to have a fee-based service. It is one of 4 Carnegie Free Libraries in Australia. Robert Whalley would remain active in library affairs as secretary of the library committee well into his old age. Nearby there's a story that Edward Bailey and others sank a mine shaft somewhere on the hill looking for gold around 1894. Specks of gold had been found when building the cable tram viaduct. Of course, no gold was found, though lots of sand. Directly opposite is 183 High Street, dating from 1919, an arts and crafts style building. Albert Hartkopf, a Windisch German, was the first owner. He was a physician running a clinic here. But more importantly, he was an all-round sportsman excelling at football, cricket, rowing and table tennis. It was in football and cricket that he was noted for later. 11 seasons with Northcote Cricket Club, competing in the state team from 1925 to 1928. Represented university in the Victorian Football League. James Street rises up on the hill on both sides of High Street. Originally Northcote Hill at High Street was much higher. It was cut down in the 19th century when cable tram viaduct was built in the 1889. Photo of the Northcote Police Station and the James Street Church. The police station in the centre is in an early Queen Anne style. Building the police station here cemented the upper Northcote domination over the original lower Northcote. The original police station was located in Walker Street, Westgarth, near All Saints Church. 35 James Street, 1880s, next to the police station. A house in two sections on high ground. The front is the earlier structure, much change with loss of chimneys, altered front windows and a terracotta tiled roof, an example of a new industry wealth settling on the hill in the late 19th century. The first occupant, and probably built for, was Valentine Griffith, a wool broker of Flinders Lane. He named the house Warragwing, an Aboriginal word meaning side of the hill. In 1914 he moved to Ivanhoe. By then he and his wife were described as two older Northcote residents. The son had become a doctor and had travelled to China and Japan. The Presbyterian Church, dating from 1894. All the churches on Northcote Hill migrated from elsewhere in Northcote. The Presbyterians first had a church in Cunningham Street, Westgarth, from 1867. 2 years later, Reverend Duncan Fraser began his connection with the area. The congregation grew quickly as Westgarth developed. Funds were raised to build a new church on the hill. Councillor McIntosh, who ran one of the general stores, laid the foundation stone. The old church in Westgarth was moved to this site as a school hall until it was relocated in 1906 to Middle Park. Swift in his History of Northcote suggests that two Aboriginals are buried at this site. Northcote Hill was a traditional corroboree ground and a meeting place for Aboriginals in the past. 36 James Street, Wallingford, dating from 1901. A small Victorian terrace built by John Timmins. House displays the art and craft of a quality construction. Notice the delicate polychromed striped brickwork, pointing and the signed chimney. Fine detailed urn decoration on the side wall. 25 James Street, a brick cottage with bay windows looking south. A significant house as John Cain lived here from 1925 to at least 1950. Earlier lived in Westgarth. He moved here when he got married. A noted Labor politician, was Premier of Victoria and instrumental in establishing Northcote High School in 1926. His son John Cain Jr. lived here also and was an important Labor politician. Like his father was Victorian Premier, worthy to note that he attended Northcote High from 1943 to 1946. Both men were passionate about local affairs. Being Catholic, were involved with St Joseph's in Westbourne Gve. Number 22 James Street. Opposite is this nicely designed Art Deco house, found motif on either side, which seemed to reflect that of number 23, opposite. 20 James Street, a distinctive California bungalow with cedar panels. 23 James Street, corner of Mackintosh Street, a two-storey Victorian terrace from the 1880s sitting on bluestone foundation. In 1913, Julius Rosenfeld, timber merchant, lived here. In 1925, W.F. Glanville lived here till at least 1941. Fan motif on the top, not untypical of Victorian houses, representing luck and prosperity. The house is unusually narrow, possibly plans for a twin building next door. 21 James Street, the other side of Mackintosh Street, a brick veneer house dating from the 1960s. This is another example of a lost history. For a brief time in 1900, a John G. Glanfield, likely the builder of the original house, lived here. However, it is a relative, Walter Glanfield, who is of interest. The family ran a fruit business as well as a poultry farm in Separation Street. There was a controversy in 1919 when Walter was charged with performing an illegal medical procedure. Was running an herbalist masseur business in Richmond at the time. Though eventually acquitted, he refused to resign from Northcote Council. He rode this out and remained a councillor for some 40 years. The next owner was a John F. Jacobs Jr., likely to be the son of a John F. Jacobs Sr., who'd established an early Preston business, a bakery and grocery store in High Street, around 1855. 19 James Street, another 1880s house. A rich Victorian polychrome terrace set on bluestone foundations. Would have had wonderful views over Melbourne. The white bricks were far more expensive to be made and a sign of wealth and importance. Here there are many. Henry W. Little lived here from at least 1900 to beyond 1925. Evie Little was a councillor and may be connected with the Ballarat Little family, where they were active in local politics also. 7 James Street. A plain, nondescript house on the left has an interesting history, not the large plum tree. James Street was built in 1884 with the creation of the Bellevue estate. William Dalziel, a furniture maker and supplier, built this house. He specialised in art and ecclesiastical furniture. Was also a land speculator, selling allotments in James Street, Clark Street and Smith Street in Thornbury. In 1902 it was part of the voter reform movement. Numbers 9 and 11 next door are later Victorian terraces, likely to have been built on Dalziel's Lane. Number 1 James Street, beside the railway cutting, dating from 1887. Even before the railway, James Street terminated at the back of a large property called the Turret House. An early settler and building contractor, William Hayes, built this, then leased to various people, retaining it for some 20 years. This was an investment property. He was a councillor for many years and mayor, was responsible for establishing Penders Park from the closest settlement board in Thornbury. Hayes lived in another earlier 1866 property in Hawthorne Lane. We turn right and head along the laneway beside the railway cutting. Note this narrow laneway, not untypical, used by night sower men. The difficulty in excavating the deep railway cutting on the west side is part of the reason for the delayed railway to Northcote. Here we see the Whittlesea train heading through the cutting. Before the railway of 1889 split the west side of Northcote Hill, there was some fine grand houses with vineyards and orchards facing the Merry Creek Plain. The tour continues in part 2, Northcote Hill, west side, Westbourne Gve. Thank you for watching.